sponsors, Dalton, the business process outsourcing company. Dalton are experts in remote teams with over 10 years of experience working with large enterprises and fast-growing companies. Reach out to Dalton for any outsource needs, large or small. EBC Associates, they help pair organizations with top talent. Stop searching, start connecting. Allow Liz and her team to help you with your next executive recruiting search. And the CEO's right hand, from raising capital to cash flow projections to building a solid financial accounting infrastructure. The CEO's right hand helps growth-minded companies scale and has a particular sweet spot for entrepreneur businesses between $2 and $15 million in revenue. Today, I'm excited to introduce our speaker, Susan. I was introduced to her through Danny Mizrahi, and I will say, with that, a lot of these speakers that I'm meeting that are giving us this great content comes from our members. So please, if you know people, share them. And Danny happens to know Susan. Susan and I had a great conversation. It felt like just such a great event idea to put this on. She is a web show host, Rest, Resiliency, and Empowerment seminar today. She received her BS in clinical psychology from Tufts and an MBA in strategic management and finance from the Wharton School. After establishing her career as a business strategist and consultant, she launched Ganz Strategic Solutions in 2018. Firm's mission is to give back time and focus to executives and take seemingly impossible business initiatives and make them happen. Please help me in welcoming Susan. Susan, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Joseph, and thanks to Danny for the introduction. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all of you being here today, and we'll have some fun. I'm going to go ahead and launch my presentation, so just bear with me. Oops. Okay. So you might be wondering how I even came up with this presentation to begin with. And it's really because over the years, I've been sharing lessons that I've learned outside of Wharton. And I've decided to call this a quick MBA to fast track you to lessons that I learned the hard way. So what we're going to talk about today is what's important to you, understanding your why, that foundation. Then we're going to go into self-care. And why are we talking about self-care? What is self-care? It's really about taking an active role in protecting your own personal, financial, and professional well-being and happiness. We'll then talk about relationship building and why that's important, and being intentional about it, meaning do you have a strategy, a process, a framework for proactively maintaining and growing relationships within and outside of your organization? And then we'll round off with becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable. Because as you know, that when we challenge ourselves to grow and change, that's where we attain the next level in our businesses. And it's human nature to avoid discomfort and the unknowns and change. So we'll talk about how one gets comfortable with that. So let's begin. And before we deep dive into purpose and practicing self-care, I'm going to ask for my Wizard of Oz behind the scenes, Jessa, to launch a poll question so we could get some interaction. Jessa, can you launch question number 1? Perfect. So if you can grade yourself on self-care, again, being defined as taking an active role in protecting your personal, financial, and professional well-being and happiness. How are you doing? Is it something you regularly practice, sometimes practice, rarely practice, or not at all? So I'll give you a few more seconds to think about that. 3 more seconds. The numbers are flipping. It's interesting. All right, so I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to share the results. So good news is about 43% of you regularly practice it. And then there's a fall off of about a little less than 30%, as sometimes 20%, 21% rarely, and just a few not at all. So let's start the discussion with starting with why. And I'm going to use the chat for you guys to engage. I'm going to ask some questions along the way, and feel free to also ask me some questions, and I'll ask for Justin and Joseph to help me if there are some burning questions in the chat. And of course, we'll have time later on for more formal questions. But I'm sure you've seen this and heard of Simon Sinek, start with why, and the importance of knowing your purpose. And that really becomes your foundation and your guidepost for understanding, what you should focus on, where your strategies and your activities are coming from is all around your purpose and being rooted in that. For me personally, that's three thematics around my why and my purpose. I've always been about wanting to make an impact on the world. And so that's one of my key focus areas. Another why is my family. So you'll see my husband and my two daughters in our backyard. And then to the far right is communities, an example of one of the organizations I'm involved with. But that's very important for me in my life. So to get you thinking about your why, you might have done this exercise, but is to really consider, what is your why? What is important to you? Why are you getting up every day to work on your business and go through the roller coaster ride of being an entrepreneur? And some prompt questions are around, what's your drive? What and really who are you doing it for? What are your long-term goals? What really makes you tick? But if you feel comfortable to share in the chat, I'd love to hear, what are some of your whys? What is it for you? Let's see if I can see what's happening in the chats. Justin said family. Terrific. Curiosity. Family, kids, live up to set, not be poor. Growing. Fantastic. Impact and community. All great whys. So let's talk about self-care, because as entrepreneurs, we can get caught up in a world where we're just like the Energizer bunny. We just keep going and going and going. But why is it important to put yourself on your own agenda? It's because you want to be able to be present and able to serve those who you care about in your life, all the different constituents, from your loved ones to your clients to your community to your friends. And you really need to be healthy in all ways and really take ownership of your schedule instead of your schedule owning you. So I put down some thoughts of what are some types of time to carve out. Very importantly is the you time. Then there's other sorts of times that we need to be mindful of. You have a partner, family, time off, friends, doctor appointments, very important, spiritual time, community time, of course, your work time, your client time, your thinking time, things of that nature. And some of you might remember the creator of the Muppets, Jim Henson. He worked all the time, and he died at such a young age of 53. He had basically walking pneumonia, and he was ignoring the signs of his health. So it's a reminder of owning you and taking that time to slow down and see the doctor and make time for other things than just work. And part of the self-care in the personal health is about being mindful and awake. I think sometimes we get into a pattern of trying to multitask, but actually multitasking doesn't necessarily make you more efficient, because it takes your brain time to adjust to another task. So it's really about being fully present in the moment and aligning to your purpose and your values. And, I learned the hard way too around mindset. It's like you really are your thoughts, just like you are what you eat, you are your thoughts. So if you're thinking negatively, you're going to show up negatively and obtain negative results. If you're thinking positively, you're going to exude that energy and get positive results. And I don't know what routines you might have for self-care. Some of the things that I do is I try to follow in the morning Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. He has a process called Savers. It stands for starting your day in silence. I do some deep breathing. A is for affirmations, V is for visualization, E is for exercise, R is for reading, S is for scribing or journaling. And this can be done in as little as 6 minutes, so 1 minute per acronym letter, or 10 minutes per, or however long you want. But the idea is to do it on a regular basis to incorporate that self-care. And my nightly ritual is the night before the next day, I map out my day. I script out what I'm going to do when, so that I get prepared. And I also find myself subconsciously thinking about the next day and just energized and ready to go. Another book that I wanted to throw out there that I found helpful with respect to mindset is Charlie Harary. He talks about Unlocking Greatness is the name of his book, and it's about the power of the mind and positive mindset. And then, of course, it's about fueling your body, right? You want to have a full battery, getting up and moving around throughout the day, but really staying hydrated is so important. Some guidelines that I've heard are about, drinking half your body weight. And some people even track it, in their calendars, how much water they have had, let's say before lunch, after lunch, etc., so that you can really be mindful of that. And, with us working from home these days, it gets a little bit more challenging to move, but make it a conscious effort that, every hour you get up for a few minutes, or even if you want to work standing up or do a call standing up, walking and talking, it can really help you. And then I thought, well, if you won't listen to me necessarily, what are some of the more famous entrepreneurs doing out there for their self-care? So some folks you might see up here, like Rashama Shojani, talks about me time. Warren Buffett, as a hobby, plays the ukulele. John Mackey walks and talks his vision of Whole Foods. He eats healthy. Bill Gates is about reading before bed. Seth Godin is about saying no and setting boundaries. And so these are very, powerful practices that each of these entrepreneurs have. Another part of health is financial health. So this is a picture of a financial house, and it's reminding you about, are you positioned to support your goals? And the foundation is really about savings and protection. You want that foundation to be strong enough, but not too big so that you can't fund your goals, but you also don't want it to be too small, because when that foundation is too small, then the rooms of your house will fall down. And the rooms in the house really represent your goals. And so the size of the rooms are about the importance of them and the money you want to devote to that, and the time frame for either getting that money or growing your business, or if you have aspirations for multiple homes or whatever it is, or giving back. This is just representative. You can make this house whatever you want and design it with the rooms that are, or the goals that are important to you. So now, getting ahead of myself. So another aspect of financial health is taking care of different aspects of the finances. So now I'm going to ask you a question, and that question is, um, these celebrities, besides no longer being with us on Earth, what do these celebrities have in common? So you could put, they all do drugs. Nice. Not the answer I was looking for. Um, any other thoughts about what these celebrities and entertainers have in common? So the answer is that they all died without having a will. And they left their loved ones and family to figure out how to distribute their assets. And so I bring this up because, we think everybody has it all together, but sometimes they don't. And just want to remind you that the process of trying to distribute somebody's assets after they're gone is difficult enough, and then when you don't have a will, it gets even harder. And you can think about too, it doesn't have to be a death situation, but even disability. If you were to get disabled, what provisions have you made? And if you are looking to exit your business one day, what are you doing relative to the planning ahead for your business? So this is just a reminder about planning ahead. And then the third aspect of self-care has to do with your professional health. And that is, again, aligning with what's important to you, your why, getting clear on your goals, and what do you want to achieve on different milestones, quarterly, annually, and even a longer term basis. The important thing is to take action on it and to measure it. And then to think about, in terms of continuously improving, what are the resources that you need to succeed, relative to your mindset? Is it any additional training or education? Is it people? Are there certain roles that you need to fill? Do you need to expand your network? Is there a physical space that you need? Is there technology needs? As part of the professional health is who's in your support system. So a great support system is your EO community here, right? Your peers and other CEOs who have experienced some of the same challenges you might have. And it's also about filling your key staff roles. Who do you need in your business to succeed? And who are mentors and sponsors in your life that you need as part of your support system? And it's thinking about who's that right hand in your business who keeps you focused on your key strategic initiatives and keeps you accountable. Who's that person that enables you to leverage your strengths, and who frees you up so that you can work more efficiently and focus on what you do best. And just pulling this all together, it's about, doing a gap analysis and assessing how you're doing. Where do you want to go? Where are you today? And then coming up with an action plan to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And it's really about creating your life by design and not by default. So you're CEOs of your company and you are CEOs of your life. And this is a reminder about that. So now we're going to move into a discussion about developing and growing business relationships. And Jessa, I'm going to ask you to launch the poll with the second question. So this is about whether or not you have an intentional relationship building plan, meaning a strategy, a process, a framework for proactively building and maintaining relationships within your organization and outside of your organization. We'll give it a few more seconds for people to respond. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and end the polling and share the results. So, whoa, my presentation just keeps flying away. So about 39% of you say that you have an intentional plan and more of you do not. So 44% and a few of you are not sure whether you do. So we'll talk about this. Okay. So another question for you. What is emotional intelligence? Why are we talking about this? Why should we care? Oops. So let me see if I can get over to the chat box so I can see what you all are saying, but I'm really interested in hearing about your thoughts. Any thoughts on emotional intelligence and why should we should care about it? Why are we even talking about it here? So just so we don't lose our cool. That's part of it. Yes. It enables connection. Great answer. So we're present to what is effective with others. Absolutely. So let's define it and we'll continue to talk about it. So emotional intelligence is about recognizing and then managing your emotions and those of others. Importantly, why should we care about it? So according to Talent Smart, 90% of top performers have high emotional intelligence. Almost 60% of job performance is due to emotional intelligence. That's how important it is in our professional lives. What's the cost of low emotional intelligence? It impacts your productivity, profitability, innovation, turnover, engagement, and morale in your company. So that's why it's important. And I'll share a story. I was doing some work for a design build company, and they had a very headstrong ex-military CEO, and he was sharing with me all these things that he felt were wrong with his business, and he thought what was wrong with his business was marketing because revenues were down. And doing an analysis and diagnostic of his business and talking with customers and staff and so forth, I found out that wasn't the issue. There were two issues. One issue was that the clients wouldn't necessarily pay full price for their work because the project was often built to the CEO's vision and not necessarily to the client's vision. And while it was beautiful work, it wasn't the client's vision. So they didn't feel they should pay full price. That was one issue. Another issue that the company had was because the CEO wanted to control everything, he would sometimes overstep his bounds, so to speak, and go and talk to the client and overstep the super. So the client got confused. Am I talking to the super? Am I talking to the CEO? Who am I talking with? And caused a whole flurry of unnecessary activity. So some examples of why we should care about emotional intelligence. So there's 4 aspects of the framework as defined by the Hay Group, and I'll go through them briefly. There's self-awareness and self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So self-awareness is about assessing your emotions. How are you responding to situations? How you're coming across. Self-management is about controlling your emotions. And if you want to take the temperature of how you are at controlling your emotions, think about how you what happens when you receive a text or an email that you find really irritating. Do you respond to it? Do you react to it? What do you do? Do you take some time before you respond? That's a good gauge. In terms of social awareness, it's about your level of empathy and to tune into the emotional climate of your employees, but also what's happening at the client, and to really be listening for how you can be of service to the client. And then relationship management is about how you serve and collaborate and manage conflict. And how are you in situations of stress and when you're not under stress. And along with emotional intelligence, I like to talk about understanding human needs as defined by Tony Robbins. And there are 6 of them. So it's about certainty, meaning more predictability, uncertainty or variety. So some people have a need for change. Significance, meaning feeling unique, important, or special. Connection or love, so feeling closeness with someone or something. Growth, expanding your capacity, capability, or understanding. And finally, contribution, having a sense of service and focusing on helping or giving to and supporting others. Now, how is this important, especially relevant today? People tend to have a driving force, meaning they focus on fulfilling their top 2 needs. And when you think about the pandemic, there are 2 needs that are really being emphasized. One is certainty. People want to know, when is this pandemic going to end? Are the vaccines going to help us? When are we going to get the vaccines? There's so much uncertainty. And the other need that people have is for connection. So doing virtual events like this and having the technological capabilities to connect have been so important during the pandemic to address our basic human needs. And when thinking about how can you as entrepreneurs bring certainty and connection, it's through things like your regular meetings and your regular contact with people. It's something that they can count on. It's by you checking in with your staff and your clients and reaching out and your vendors. So just be mindful of that as you're conducting your business. And to take it up a notch, it's really about determining on an individual basis what are the top needs of the people that you are working with, and to tailor your interactions so that you're meeting those needs. So some thoughts on relationship building. It's about building what I call your internal networks, and then we'll talk in a minute about external networks. So it's about your ecosystem, about building relationships with your employees, your suppliers, your internal strategic partners, and your clients. And it's about really being intentional and discovering what are your colleagues' likes and dislikes, your clients' likes and dislikes. What are their preferred communication styles? Do they like to communicate through text? Is it a phone call? Is it an email? In person when you're able to? Is it through LinkedIn? Is it through WhatsApp? I mean, there's so many communication channels. Figuring out what people prefer so you can get a response and communicate with them is very important. And to also build, I'm sure you've heard of and possibly read The Go-Giver. It's about being of service and also being mindful about how you make people feel. I'm sure you've also heard of the Maya Angelou quote about people won't necessarily remember about what you said, but what they're really going to remember is that how you made them feel, that emotional connection. Externally, how you build that is getting involved in organizations like EO, right? This professional organization, charitable, religious, or through a hobby and a way of growing you personally and professionally. It's about learning your best practices and also showcasing your value and your expertise. And I also building opportunities to create relationships with strategic partners and ways of seeking out your mentors and sponsors who are going to support you. And so I've put together a very simple chart that you can fill out detail, but just a way of thinking about your intentionality with reaching out. It's like, who do you want to reach out to within the industry in terms of clients or potential clients? You know, at what levels of people do you want to reach out to? And then within this, it could be, how frequently do you want to meet with them or have a touch point? And not only the frequency, but what method. You know, is it a newsletter? Is it a call? Is it something else? Whatever works for you and your client and the person who's being the recipient of the communication. And one thing I also like to point out is the common networking weaknesses. And this is blind spots. And this is from Jennifer Brown Consulting. She talks about, you know, is your network really birds of a feather? Is it too homogenous? Are they all like you? Or do you have a network lag where they are focused on your past versus your future? Do you have a network that's an echo chamber, meaning they all know each other? Or your contacts seeing you can't see you doing something different? Are they just pigeonholing you? So some of the things to consider is to be aware of your tendencies and natural reactions when it comes to reaching out and networking. And it's about seeking to understand and not jumping to conclusions about people. And it's really about getting curious. Somebody mentioned curiosity as a core value. And it's reading articles and books by not the same people, but really by a collection of different people. And it's about expanding your networks and your teams when you're making decisions or looking to develop relationships. It's asking all different sorts of people. As this broadens your perspective and your information breadth, if you will. And it's also to be mindful in meetings, to be attuned to and include and hear different voices. And think about being creative when you are connecting. You know, perhaps there are events or programs of interest that you want to pass along, articles and books, making introductions, right, that add value to business. It's proactively setting up, 15 minutes of a virtual coffee or tea, developing relationships, again, like I said, through professional or charitable organizations or through a hobby, or just sharing your expertise or in communities where you're able to write articles and showcase your value. And the final lesson in our very quick MBA is about being open to possibilities and taking risks. So I'm going to ask Jessa to go ahead and launch the poll. And so this question is about growth and change often requiring some level of discomfort, as I said in the beginning. Rate yourself on being comfortable with the uncomfortable. So I'll give you a few seconds to think about that question. Is it something you regularly embrace, sometimes embrace, or not at all? I'll give you a few more seconds before I close out the poll. I'll give it 2 more. Okay, so I'm going to end the polling and share the results. So about 43% of you said that you regularly embrace the uncomfortable. There's still a high percentage, about 36% of you sometimes embrace it, so not all the time. And then 21% of you who are not comfortable with the uncomfortable. So let's talk about that. So I love these quotes by Disney and Robert Frost. They really speak to me. So the first one by Disney is hard to read, so I'll read it for you. It says, all our dreams come true if we have the courage to pursue them. It's a great reminder of why it's okay to be uncomfortable. And then Robert Frost says, I took the less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So meaning something that was uncomfortable, a road not frequented, and that made the difference, meaning the growth, the magic happened. And I will share with you from my web show yesterday, I was interviewing Erin Hatzikatzis, and she was CEO of a 9-figure company, and she walked away from the corporate world to launch her own firm. But she talks about the 50% rule, and her 50% rule is if I'm 50% uncomfortable with doing something, that means that's a good thing for me to be doing because I'm growing. So I challenge you to think about that for yourselves, what resonates, but it's also to recognize, look, change is a part of business. When you think about it, 10, 12 years ago, who would have thought that a smartphone would be something we couldn't live without, that we conduct our businesses, our meetings, our we can edit documents on them, we can film movies on them, we could do podcasts, the whole thing. Just think about that. And it's really the growth that truly happens when you're not comfortable, because that's your learning. And it's understanding, I'll go back to your why, where we started. It's understanding what you want and pursuing it in alignment with what's important to you and your goals. And what's great about an organization like EO is that it gives you the opportunity to have mentors and people who you could look up to, who could be sponsors for you, and to support you in that growth and change mode. And so I'll give you a personal example of where I went out of my way outside of my comfort zone. And that's when I was doing technology management on Wall Street. I was handed a project where it had failed 8 times before. They spent millions of dollars on it. And I had no formal technology management training. And I had a choice. I could have said, well, no, not me. No, I'm going to mess it up. What do I know? Or I could do what I did was embrace it and focus on what I did know. And what I did know was how to ask good questions, how to find resources, how to align people and figure out, well, why did this thing fail? And it failed because the stakeholders weren't involved. So I was able to solve for that and get them aligned and let them know that we were going on a roller coaster ride together and get them involved. And we turned that around and we delivered, and actually we wound up saving the organization $12 million a year. So I share that with you because sometimes we need to do things that are scary. You've already done something that's scary, which is start a business, and to take your business to the next level and to thrive during a pandemic is about embracing change and being resilient. And again, if if that doesn't inspire you, perhaps some of these entrepreneurs might inspire you. And these are some of the things that these entrepreneurs and others have said that going outside of the comfort zone has been so meaningful to them. And it's about, trying new things and meeting new people and stepping into the discomfort and being okay with that. And I know the entrepreneur operating system also talks about being uncomfortable, surrounding yourself with people who challenge you, and be intentional about your change and taking those baby steps and the calculated risks and just working through that fear because it'll be worth it. And so I'd love to hear from you in the chat around what changes have you seen in your business or your industry over time?
Just work for me personally. I'll get the conversation started.
Yeah.
The change with being remote and managing teams is a challenge to stay connected, and to build those relationships, separate and apart from like team huddles. Once the Zoom goes off, there are people just working at home all day, and it's just not, as a business owner, I've always been okay with remote work, but when the whole company's remote, it just feels just not, it doesn't feel like this is the way we're supposed to be going about our jobs and our work. And so that's uncomfortable for me, owning a company and managing a team where no one interacts face to face in person.
Yes, and thank you so much, Joseph, for sharing that yes, it is unnatural to be in what I call a 2D world instead of a 3D world. I know something that folks have shared with me that's been helpful with their teams is to schedule some time when you're not talking about business and do something fun, whatever you think will resonate with your teams. I've heard people do things, everything from group yoga sessions to, of course, happy hours, to trivia, to bingo, to wine tastings. I mean, there's cooking together. I've participated in cooking banana chocolate chip muffins. I've never made those before. I never did that via Zoom. So those are some ways that could create that connection. And what I've been seeing in the chat is that people are saying about how they've pivoted to be remote and put their team in the cloud, and it's also expanded them, right? They're not geographically centric anymore. You can be global. So to think about that, then the point on this whole lesson here is that, nothing's going to stay the same. We can't predict necessarily what's going to change, but know that there will be change ahead, and to be flexible. I think that's been a big word in the vocabulary, has been to be flexible and to be open-minded. And so how do we put these lessons all together? And then I'll open it up for questions. A way that I like to think about it is a process that I call CPAS. And CPAS stands for, the C is clarity, so where we started, getting clear on your goals, what's important to you, what's your why. The P, which I think is so important for entrepreneurs, is giving yourself permission to put yourself on the agenda. And if you have trouble with that, you can just blame me. You said, Susan Ganz said I could put myself on my agenda. A is for access. So here it's about gaining access to ideas and solutions by working with experts, educating yourself on possibilities, and again, leveraging an organization like EO. The first S is about security. So that's making sure that your world, your personal life, your financial world, your professional world is built on a solid foundation that can support you in your success. And then the second S is all about support. So it's surrounding yourself with your personal board of directors for all the different aspects of your life. And in terms of continuously improving, I don't know if you've read Atomic Habits by James Clear, but something that really resonated with me from his book had to do with how do you really stick to your habits and what's going to make you successful going forward. And one of the things he points out is to make the behaviors a little new so that you will have some consistency around it. To what he points out in the book is that boredom is a threat to success. So a thought I will leave you with there. And I'd love to hear from you what you took away from this conversation today. What did you get for you? And if you feel comfortable sharing what is an action that you will commit to doing, because you've invested an hour today to be part of this program. Or I'd love for you to be able to walk with away with something and anchor in the lessons and share what you're going to do. So I'm just going to pop over to the chat here. Okay, and Danny says now he's working not from home. So he's been working in the 3D world. It's great. And working from home being unnatural. So feel free to continue sharing in the chat. What I would invite you to do is to do something today that your future self is going to thank you for. So whatever resonated with you from this presentation, or if it sparked a thought or an idea, to move forward with that and action on it. I'm happy to continue the conversation. My contact information is here. You can email me, you can call me directly, you can go through my website, you can ping me on LinkedIn. That's Susan Ganz of Ganz Strategic Solutions. If you are curious about something that we talked about today and want to go deeper, I'm offering for you all a complimentary 30-minute discovery session. If you're wondering about how things are going in your business, I have an operations self-assessment that is complimentary. I'm happy to share with you. I believe that Joseph is going to share out the presentation, but in case you don't get it, you can also email me at susan@ganzstrategicsolutions.com. And at this point, I'm going to stop the share so I can see you all and answer any questions that you might have. And somebody said that they're going to think about their professional relationships that they want to foster, write down the who and the how frequently and who they want to connect with. That's fantastic. Great. And asking yourself the questions for your goals. What your drive? What are you doing it for? The long-term goals. Fantastic. Great. And somebody said they just went to the gym and that's why their video is off. That's good. Self-care. To get back to journaling. Yes. To really be conscious of your thoughts and what you're grateful for, results you're committed to, things you're proud of. Any questions for me? What can I answer for you?
I can ask a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Who is that? Joe?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I love this presentation. It seemed like it was a compilation of some of the most, some of the smartest people, from the Tony Robbins to the this, to the that, and all these like tips and tricks. So to me, it was like, like a really cool summary of each one of those. You know, I'm wondering if there's a next step in regards to that. Like, do you have, like, I want a copy of this presentation, but is part of your program diving into one of those, each of those, I should say, or do you have material on a cheat sheet for each of those? Because they were all like little tiny teases that I want more of. You know what I mean?
Yes, we can talk about that. So I can go deeper. You know, it really depends, you know, what you as a person need or what your organization needs. And I've done work with people, let's say, around their business development and coming up with, well, what's their plan and what are they going to do and how are they going to get it out there? Or you know, some people say, well, I don't even know how to market. Like, where do I market? Where do I start? And you know, I have a program around, well, how do you do that? Or, you know, on mindfulness, how do you, you know, lead with intention, right? So there's different things. So you and I can talk offline, Danny. Happy to support you. Let me see what's going on in the chat. Okay, so a couple of good questions here. So somebody said, Speaka, really prioritizing self-care and checking in with yourself, because that gets challenging, and finding ways to foster this, yes, with your employees as well. They need to take care of themselves too. And emotional intelligence, not responding to situations on impulse, which we can have a tendency to do. A scout's mindset and taking every situation as it is without letting emotions getting involved. And I'm not saying take emotion out of things, because emotions are important. So emotions are data and feedback. So pay attention to emotions, intentional actions, decisions, and risk taking. Yes. So yes, there is a book that I've used where you can measure EI. And then things, let's say, where you're low on EI, they give you some suggestions on areas to focus on. And if you email me, I can get that to you. It could be a self-reporting tool. Yes. Other questions? Feel free to.
You brought up the networking slide. I'm curious, of the four different networking boxes, is there one that we should look to be in? Like the Echo group doesn't seem like the right one, but is there one that you would recommend?
So those were all in those networking bubbles that I showed. Those are all the blind spots.
Oh, the blind spots. Yep.
Yeah. So that was to be mindful of the blind spots. To avoid the blind spots, it's really about I was listening to a chat room yesterday in Clubhouse, and somebody put it that, you know, there are people in your life, let's say, that are from your past, and you reach out to them. And there's people, he called it so old friends. And then he called it like maintain friends. They're the people you still want to have in your life. But then he also talked about growth friends and growth people, and being around people who are going to challenge you and inspire you to that next level. So what I would say is to avoid the, you know, knowing the same people in the echo chamber and they're like thinking of you in the past, is really to surround yourself with people who are going to take you to that next level, who are going to expose you to things that you haven't thought about, who are really going to be these growth oriented folks. These, you know, are there specific entrepreneurs that you might look up to? You know, where are they hanging out and speaking? Or so that's one way of mentorship. And then to actively seek out networks that aren't just like you and where you know most of the people. I've started to notice where I was in a group where a lot of the same people were coming, and I said, wait, I got to stop, because I see these people in other groups. I need to really think about, you know, some other ideas and expand myself. So it's the same for you all to think about, like, where are those groups that are going to bring out the best in you, and where are some things that maybe it's going to make you slightly uncomfortable, so where you can learn and grow.
I just left a networking group because it felt like the echo group. Just felt like everyone just I don't know, but I like that slide a lot. That spoke to me.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I sent out an email to the whole EO, and Susan, I put you on it with like an emotional intelligence 2.0 cheat sheet of those 4 areas of self-awareness and et cetera, et cetera. And I find that I definitely recommend reading Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's a great book, but then that cheat sheet kind of helps you remember some of the strategies on those 4 quadrants.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions before we wrap up? All right. Well, Susan, I just want to thank you for being here. And I just want to share one event that's coming up in the Boardroom series on February 16th with a guy named Anthony Welters. He built a healthcare business that was acquired by United Health, and he is a resilient entrepreneur, a gritty entrepreneur, and he served as executive chairman to the CEO of United Health for over 20 years. This will be a very, I think, exclusive and informative conversation. I highly recommend you guys look on the EO website for that event and others. That is February 16th at, I think, 11 or 11:30 in the morning. So Susan, thank you again so much for being here. I will send the recording out the next day or so. And everyone, thank you for attending. Really appreciate it.
And thank you. I'll stay on for a few minutes if people have additional questions.
Susan, I have an additional question I want to ask you.
Sure.
You talked about COVID and people feeling the need to have one of 2 things, security.
Yes, certainty. Yep.
With certainty and connecting.
Yes.
If I didn't feel any single one of those 2 during COVID, what does that say about me? Like,
No, nothing. It doesn't say it. It's no judgment. It's that wasn't a need for you.
Cool.
That's no judgment. Seriously. It's just the tendency has been, what I've observed during the pandemic is that people just really wanted to know, like, a big question: when are we getting back to normal? Well, there is no normal anymore. Or, when are we going to be able to meet in person, and how is that going to happen? And what is a gathering of EO even going to look like in the future? So a lot of people have those sorts of questions, and the way that I found that once you recognize, okay, people have this need, how do you fulfill it? What can you do? Well, we can't meet in person, but how can we meet on video chat? How can we make it as 3D-ish as possible? And even getting creative, some people have been using voice messages more as a way of like connecting emotionally. Even the other day I received a video introduction to somebody where they recorded something and said, "You two must meet, here's so and so," and they're like this, and it just was like a different energy and dynamic. So just thinking about that, what people need. And in terms of connection, I just really felt early on in the pandemic, it got very isolating because you're at home all the time. It's like, where were you going? Especially in the beginning, where were you going? Like upstairs, downstairs, if you're lucky to have multi-level, right? It's just, and so that's what people were seeking. And I know in things that I was doing with various organizations in terms of sort of my outside my profession was about creating experiences for people. Like people wanted experiences. And, that's how all new, think about it, how all new companies and things have been happening. Like, who would have thought about Clubhouse? People meeting randomly in rooms and talking about various subjects, and anybody can pop on there and create a room. And that wouldn't have been, people would be like, are you crazy? You know, but that's a whole business now, and people have gotten into the distribution of PPE. I know a financial advisor that's doing that, and it's like, it's just it's spawned off all, a lot of creative ideas. I mean, I created a web show because I wanted to give back. I wanted to connect with people, and I wanted positive messages to get out there. But if you told me 2 years ago, Susan, you're going to create a web show, I would have been like, you're absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I hear you. Cool. Well, Susan, I'm going to run. I really appreciate you doing this. And thank you so much for setting this up with me. And yeah,
Yes, and let's stay in touch, and I'm happy to continue
I
the
just followed you on
conversation.
Clubhouse.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
Another follower.
Well, I will see you soon and speak to you soon.
All
Thank you.
right. Be well. Bye for now, everybody.